Well, it looks like the Tories and Labour are conspiring together up and down the country. And frankly, I think Kemi Badenoch, the Tory party leader, is either a coward or completely and utterly powerless. And that's because local elections have been cancelled again by this increasingly Orwellian authoritarian government, costing up to 10 million people their right to kick out their councillors. But Kemi Badenoch, after hearing the news, came up with some tough talk.
Let me be very clear. The Conservative Party policy is that we should be fighting elections next May.
And so has her Shadow Housing Secretary, James Cleverly.
We've made it clear, and I've made it clear long before this announcement, that we should not be cancelling elections.
But GB News' own Christopher Hope has revealed that Kemi Badenoch has now refused to overrule the many Conservative councils across the country that would be facing public scrutiny next May. The Labour government, of course, are trying to wash their hands of any responsibility here by passing the decision to suspend elections directly to councils. But that's like asking someone, would you rather like to spend another year in office or lose your job, isn't it? Because they're all facing a wipeout to Reform UK. And frankly, this act of moral cowardice by Kemi Badenoch shows to me that the Conservatives have learnt nothing since their trouncing in the general election, and that they're willing to behave just like the Labour Party are, avoiding public scrutiny. So why won't you enforce your party line, Kemi? Is it because your own leadership hinges on local elections? Is it that, and maybe you're just being a coward and don't want to face the chop yourself? Or is it because you don't even have control over your own party? Either way, Kemi, it's not a good look, is it? I am so severely disappointed by this, by the way, because I've been recently singing Kemi Badenoch's praises, but once again finding that that praise towards the Conservative Party is misplaced. Let me warn you, Kemi, the public will not forget your spinelessness. And they really, really won't. They have very, very long memories, the British public, as the Tories found out in the last election. But that's all being said. There is one man in the Conservative Party that is, as ever, a moral bastion of the Tories.
So let me say this to any Conservative councillor who is thinking of voting in favour of delaying elections: don't. You are not a Conservative if you do. You are doing it purely to retain your office for a year.
Hear, hear. I agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg. That's the kind of leadership that would return some faith to the public for the Tories. Well, how about this? Any council, this is my idea, by the way, any council that postpones elections should have their £13,000 councillors' allowance suspended from May 2026. And then we should also bar them from increasing council tax, because surely this is an elected job. You are being held accountable for those decisions. And I bet it would be truly magical to watch how swiftly they all suddenly discover that they've got the capacity to organise and hold these elections.
Every time you're online, your money and your identity are at risk. Scams now make up nearly 40% of all crime in the UK. That's thousands of attacks every single day. In Britain, someone has their identity stolen every 2 minutes, leaving victims with wrecked finances and years of stress. The threat is real, and you could be next. ExpressVPN is your shield against criminals. It locks down your devices, hiding your personal information and financial details from hackers, scammers, and anyone else looking to exploit you. So whether you're checking your bank, shopping, or just browsing, ExpressVPN makes you invisible to prying eyes trying to steal your money and your identity. ExpressVPN shields your data with military-grade AES 256 encryption. That's the same standard trusted by the US government to guard classified information. This is the highest level of online security you can get. So don't wait for disaster. Secure up to 14 devices at once and get powerful password protection. Real support is available 24/7 because cybercrime never sleeps. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Every moment you hesitate is another moment you're exposed. protect your money and protect your identity. Get ExpressVPN right now.
Now let's get the thoughts of my panel. Reform UK councillor Layla Cunningham's joining me, former Labour advisor Matthew Torbett and former Conservative advisor Lauren McEvitt. Lauren, I'll start with you. You're a former Conservative advisor. I appreciate, you're not in the party.
Well, just to clarify, I'm a former advisor, not former Conservative.
Sorry.
I am, in fact, still a Conservative,
yes.
but a former advisor.
There we go, exactly. That's good clarification. Now, listen, I think when you're a politician, you must face scrutiny whether you like the odds or you don't. And I think what the Labour Party here has done is very clever because it hands the baton down to the political parties and themselves. But it's shown Kemi Badenoch up.
I disagree. I think you've got to remember that the Conservative Party is ultimately a party of localism. And she's saying that she's not going to dictate from the centre, which is actually, I believe, what she should be avoiding doing. And I think that you've also got to remember that a lot of these elections would only have stood for a year. And so the money involved in running 2 elections versus running 1 is actually a very sensible decision to only do 1 set of elections because the cost involved is significantly higher than that allowance.
Why can't you reorganise after? Why can't you hold it?
Because we are reorganising after. This is after the proposal and what. So when you create a unitary authority, which I appreciate is not something that you've had to do in London, but out in Gloucestershire, where I'm from, is a very different kettle of fish. You are merging district functions into the county function and multiple district councils, both of which had staggered election processes. So what this is doing is rectifying the staggered election process into one election process in 2027 instead of 2026, so instead of having elections only stand for 1 year.
So you reorganise after the elections. The thing is...
for 1 year.
The thing is...
the reorganisation is happening right now. It's not something you can park for a year. It doesn't really work like that.
Once you cross the threshold that you can cancel elections for reorganisation, it's a very slippery slope because voters voted those people in for a set term.
Yes.
And you only get permission to extend that term from the voter. You don't give it to yourself.
OK, the voter voted in the Labour Party, which promised reform of local government, and this was one of the reforms that they promised.
They didn't promise to cancel elections.
They did promise to bring in unitary authorities, and what this is doing is rectifying the electoral system for the unitary authorities. It was in their manifesto. So technically, people did vote for this.
No,
and I'm sorry, I'm not taking it from that they didn't. They got the majority, quite a big one.
They did not vote to delay. If they said the reorganisation will mean that the next local elections in 2026...
is delayed by 1 year.
Can you let me speak? Will be delayed for a year. Let's see if people would have voted for that. That means they either really didn't plan well or they're more draconian and they wanted to slip this through the back door, basically.
Or there's an argument that people didn't read the manifesto well enough, and perhaps if they had done, they wouldn't have voted for it. But they did vote for it.
Did they say they were going to cancel local elections?
Massive local government reorganisation is always going to take longer than 6 months.
I don't think they said they were going to cancel. Then they shouldn't have said it then.
My understanding is as of Layla's, and I think you make a good point, maybe it was buried within the policy. However, I think the average Joe like me will look at the manifesto on face value, go, yeah, you want to reorganise things, fine, we don't care, do it. But actually, the case for suspending elections is not strong enough in this case. That's my opinion on this. Matthew, I'll pass this over to you, though, because, of course...
You don't have to. I was very much enjoying the infighting on the right. It is beneficial for me.
Well, absolutely
is. He was about 3 minutes away from throwing jelly on the mix. So.
Well, absolutely. But of course, this is the Labour government's plans. This is your party's, at the end of the day, burden to carry, as much as what the Tories have done by going along with the suspension, I think, is complicity. And there are
political cartel, Alex.
Well, that's what I think it is. I think it's an establishment stitch-up
because
because
then
both
you're
parties
presuming
are
that the decisions have been made centrally, and they specifically have not. The parties are leaving it to the individual councils to judge whether or not they are able to.
That is the line, right?
But they're all going to. But if we're looking at the polls, Matthew, all of the current councils are looking at a part of Reform UK that is going to be going after them, and a lot of them will lose their seats, lose control of councils. So you can't really be asking permission from councils. It's like my boss coming up to me going, Alex, would you like me to sack you, or would you like to stay in your job for another year? That's the level of silliness we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also think it's silly to think somebody will go, I can keep, 13 grand allowances for another year. If you're on your way out, you're on your way out. And I think
another year of 13 grand is quite a lot of money.
It's not about the money. It's about the decisions that council makes. And they're quite, they have significant effects on local residents. And these people were voted in for a certain term. The only way you get to extend your term is to take it to the voter. You don't get to extend it. What's next? When will they delay elections next?
Very nice. That sounds very nice.
It sounds very nice, but it also presumes that in a year's time they aren't voting for an entirely different entity, an entirely new entity, which is what they are.
To be fair, you either believe in democracy as an absolute or you don't. I don't care what the reason is. You don't just cancel elections for reorganisations because then you can cancel it for something else.
Hang on a minute. No.
We've never cancelled it. We've never cancelled it before, apart for emergencies.
If we start doing this up and down the country and people are in for a year and then we go, no, you got to go again now. Yeah. Your Doge unit will have a field day.
Yeah,
Surely we've just wasted millions of pounds.
Then you don't pledge in your manifesto to reorganise local government if you don't have the foresight to know how long it's going to take. I'm sorry. This is not the fault of democracy. You don't sacrifice democracy for lack of foresight.
That's my opinion too, and I think there were lots of people who will share that. I think we can make lots of political reasons to excuse the decision, and there's some good logistical arguments that you've made as well, Lauren, and I understand, yes, it would be wasteful. However, I think the public are quite clearly incited by this. They feel like something's been taken away from them.
Really? Because I think that most of the time people don't give two craps about local government.
I have to apologise for the language. But yes, maybe you're right. However, that being said, when council tax is reaching all-time highs, services are failing, I think it's
a good reason to have unitary authorities and simplify.
Well, exactly, and simplifies everything, which is actually going to bring down the cost of doing government by so much money.
Yeah,
I'm enormously in favour of moving to unitary.
Because the
Lib Dems are no longer going to be able to do with one hand on this side and another hand on that side and blame the Tories in the middle in Gloucestershire.
The Lib Dems, by the way, have also come out and condemned this decision, but I suspect their councils will go along with it as well. The point I was trying to make, and I said I am disappointed in Kemi Badenoch here because she has been quite strong, at least publicly speaking, lately. And I think if she says this is scandalous and she said this should never go ahead and she hates it so much, she should enforce her party line on this. Yeah. And I agree. I understand what you're saying about localism.
There's a localism issue.
I understand that. But at the same time, if you're going to go out in the public and say we should have elections, then you should enforce that, at least on your party, if you want to be taken seriously. Again, looking at it from the average Joe's perspective, it doesn't look like a good, strong leader. That it looks to me, and to I guess to most people watching, that she's just said one thing and is doing the other.
It also looks like a party without principles. Right? If she says it must go ahead for the sake of democracy, then it looks like every other council leader doesn't follow the basic principles of the Conservatives, which should be to defend freedom and democracy.
And that's the representative from the party that can only travel on Nigel Farage's coattails.
Do you think so? Do you think so?
Because they're the only party in the country where it's just one guy. It's just one guy, and they all sing and dance to his tune.
Yeah,
you know what it is?
Whereas we believe in localism in our party. We believe in empowering local leaders.
Let me tell you the difference.
Let Layla respond.
Let me tell you the difference. Nigel Farage is a leader that people follow willingly. We never have back chat like you do in the Conservative. Are you calling me blind?
I'm calling some of your colleagues blind.
Who? If you name them and shame them, if you are.
No, because that's rude and I'll get sued.
So if you're going to throw insults, name and shame the colleagues, or don't throw insults. Stick by your words.
Defamation laws of this country before you ask them.
I'm not suing you for defamation. I'm saying if you're going to name and shame someone...
Matthew, would you like to name and shame anyone while we're here?
No, I'd also like to not get sued.
There we go.
What I will concede, though, Alex, if I'm going to be fair, is it isn't a good look. However, I think there's good reasons for doing so.
OK, fair enough. I personally agree with Layla on this one. I think it's an establishment stitch-up, and I think the public will see it that way too. But then, what do I know, right?